The German plan at Verdun was not to win ground. It was to bleed France until France had nothing left to bleed. In 300 days of fighting, both sides lost so many men that the French army mutinied. The Germans lost just as many. Neither side could explain what the battle had been for. You are 22 years old and you are from Lyon, where your father has a bakery on Rue de la République that opens at 5 in the morning. It smells of flour and wood smoke and the particular warm smell of bread cooling on a rack. The thing you know best in the world before all of this is the weight of a 2-kilogram meek in your hands, the exact density of something that took all night to become what it is. You have been in the army for 16 months. You are a private in the 130th Infantry Regiment, and until 3 days ago you were in a rest sector near Bar-le-Duc, sleeping in a barn with 11 other men, playing cards, writing letters home that said nothing true about anything that mattered. Then the Germans opened the offensive at Verdun on February 21st, and the orders changed. Everything that was a rest sector became a transit point, and everything that was a transit point became a road pointing northeast toward a sound you can hear from 40 kilometers away. A continuous low pressure that is not quite thunder and not quite anything you have heard before, something the body registers below the level of hearing, in the chest, in the back of the jaw. Your lieutenant told the platoon that the line would hold. He said the forts at Verdun were the strongest in France and the Germans would break themselves against Valenciennes. He said this on February 23rd. Fort Douaumont, the largest fort in the Verdun defensive system, fell to a German patrol of 9 men on February 25th without a single French defender firing a shot, because the fort had been stripped of its garrison to feed the open battlefield. You do not know this yet. You know the road to Verdun, which is called the Voie Sacrée, the Sacred Way, because it is the only road still open into the city. Everything that Verdun needs comes down it, ammunition and food and men, and everything that Verdun produces comes back up it, which is the wounded and the dead and the men who have been inside long enough that they need to come out. You are in a truck on the Voie Sacrée moving toward the sound. The truck passes a column, moving the other direction, men on foot, moving slowly, not in formation, some of them with bandages and some of them without visible wounds. Some of them looking at the road directly in front of their feet with an attention that has nothing to do with watching where they are going. You watch them pass. You do not know yet that in 6 weeks you will be one of them, moving in the other direction on the same road, looking at the same piece of road in front of your feet. The Verdun sector does not look like a battlefield. It looks like the surface of something that has never been a battlefield and has also never been anything else. A landscape so completely worked over by artillery that the original features of the ground are gone. The trees gone, the roads gone, the farm buildings gone, the topsoil gone. What remains is a gray-brown churned surface of shell, craters overlapping shell craters, each one merging into the next, stretching to every horizon without interruption, without a single vertical line except the smoke. Your regiment enters the sector on March 3rd, and takes over a section of trench from a unit of the 20th Corps that has been in the line for 8 days. The men coming out do not look at you. They move past without acknowledgement, without the usual remarks that pass between units at a relief. You understand after a moment that this is not rudeness but something more like the way a man walks past a mirror when he does not want to see what is in it. The trench is 4 meters deep in most places and not deep enough in any of them. The German lines are 80 meters to the east. The German artillery fires on your section continuously, not in barrages with intervals between them but continuously, because at Verdun the German artillery has enough shells to fire continuously, and this is the fact that underlies every other fact about this place. You learn the trench in the first 48 hours the way you learn any place you cannot leave, by necessity, by the cost of not knowing. Which sections have better overhead cover? Which stretches of parapet have gaps the German snipers have registered? Which direction to run when the shells begin landing close? The shells land close constantly. On the 4th day a man named Pellicia, who slept beside you in the barn at Bar-le-Duc, and who owed you 3 francs from a card game you will never collect on now, is killed by a shell fragment 2 meters from where you are standing. You do not see it happen, you hear it and then you look and Pellicia is on the ground. You go to him, you do what you can, which is nothing, and then you go back to your section of the trench because the shell that killed him was not the last shell, and the next one is already in the air. There is no service, there is no time. You pick up his identification tag because someone has to and put it in your pocket. You do not think about it again until that night when you are trying to sleep and your hand closes around it in the dark, and you hold it without taking it out and eventually you sleep. The French army has invented something at Verdun called the noria, the water wheel, a system of rotating units into and out of the salient at regular intervals to prevent the complete destruction of any single regiment. The theory is that no unit stays in the Verdun sector long enough to be entirely consumed. The reality is that 70% of the entire French army will pass through Verdun before the battle ends, which means the consumption is total, only distributed more evenly than it would otherwise be. The way you can boil a large quantity of water by moving the pot around the fire, rather than leaving it in one place. You come out of the line on April 11th after 39 days in the Verdun sector. Your regiment entered with 600 men. It comes out with 380. The 220 who are not coming out are distributed between the aid stations, the field hospitals, the collection points for the dead, and the category of missing, which at Verdun is larger than most sectors because the artillery is heavy enough to remove the evidence of a man's presence entirely. You walk out on the Voie Sacrée looking at the road directly in front of your feet. You pass a column of men moving in the other direction. You do not look at them. You are given 8 days of rest at a village 30 kilometers from Verdun, where the artillery is not audible in daylight, only at night when the wind is from the northeast. You sleep for the first 2 days with the depth of a man who has been awake for longer than sleep can fully account for. You eat, you wash your uniform, which takes 2 washings to remove what the trench left in it. You write a letter home. The letter says you are well and the food is adequate and you expect to be rotated to a quieter sector soon. You give it to the courier before you can change what it says. On April 19th they send you back. The same road, the same sound beginning 40 kilometers out, the low pressure in the chest, in the jaw. The same landscape arriving as the truck approaches the sector. The same trench. You take over the same section your regiment held in March, and you recognize it the way you recognize a place you hope not to see again, with a particular attention to the details that have changed and the details that have not. The section of parapet where the sniper gap is has not been repaired. The overhead cover over the third traverse is still inadequate. The shell crater, 15 meters to the east that Pélissier used to use as a latrine at night, is larger now, extended by subsequent shells. A different shape, but in the same position. You are in the trench for 11 days when the sector goes quiet. Not the quiet of a lull, a different quiet. The German artillery, which has been firing continuously for 3 months, stops. You stay in the trench and you wait because you have learned that quiet at Verdun is not peace, but a different kind of information, and the information is that the infantry is coming. The German assault on May 22nd hits the section of line 400 meters to your north. You can hear it and you can see the signal flares, and you stay in your trench and wait for the order. The order does not come for 6 hours. 6 hours during which the battle to your north produces a sound that is distinct from artillery, a closer and more irregular sound. Then the order comes and your platoon moves north to reinforce the position, and by the time you arrive the German assault has been stopped and the position has held. But the cost of holding it is visible in the 40 meters of trench you move through to reach the men who held it. You do not count what you see in that 40 meters. You have learned that some numbers are not useful to carry. They send you back a third time in October, 8 months after you first drove toward the Sound, on the Voie Sacrée. The battle is not the same battle it was in February. It is slower now, the German offensive spent, and the French counter-offensive beginning, the line moving east for the first time in months. You are in a different section of trench now, 600 meters north of where you were in March and May, close enough to Fort Douaumont that you can see its outline on clear days. The largest fort in France sitting in German hands since February 25th because 9 men walked into it while it was empty. On October 24th, the French artillery fires for 6 hours and then you go forward. You move across the surface of Verdun, which by October has been shelled continuously for 8 months. It has a quality unlike any other surface you have walked on, soft in places where the shelled craters have filled with water and mud, hard in places where the limestone is exposed. And between these two textures, a third texture, which is the things the surface contains that are not limestone and not mud, the things that 8 months of fighting at this density produce and that the ground absorbs without being able to fully absorb. You do not look down. You look at the outline of Fort Douaumont and you move toward it, and on October 24, 1916, the French army takes Fort du Haut-Mont back, 8 months after it fell in 20 minutes to 9 Germans who walked in through an unguarded door. You are inside the fort when it is declared retaken. You sit against the interior wall of the largest fort in France, in a corridor that smells of damp stone and something underneath the damp stone. You try to understand what 8 months of this has been for. You do not understand it. You are not sure the understanding exists anywhere in a form that could reach you. They pull your regiment out of the line on November 8, 1916. The Battle of Verdun will officially end on December 18, 300 days after it began. The front line on December 18th will be almost exactly where it was on February 21st. You walk out on the Voie Sacrée for the 3rd time. You pass a column, moving in the other direction, men on trucks this time, sitting in the beds with their rifles across their knees, looking at the road ahead or at their hands or at nothing in particular. You look at them the way the men looked at you in February, without acknowledgement, without the usual remarks. Because you understand now what the look was, which is not indifference but its opposite, a recognition so complete that it requires no expression. Your hands, coming out of the line for the 3rd time, are the hands of a man who has been doing this since March. The knuckle on the right index finger is scarred from the 3rd week of the 1st rotation. A small thing, a wire cut, a thing that healed without ceremony while everything else was happening. You look at your hands. Pélissier's identification tag is still in your left breast pocket. You have carried it for 7 months through 2 more rotations because you kept meaning to give it to someone, and there was never a clear moment to do it. Then so much time passed that the tag became yours to carry, in the way that some things become yours not because you chose them, but because you were there when they needed carrying. The bread at your father's bakery in Lyon takes all night to become what it is. You do not know how long it takes to become what you are now. You look at the road and you walk south, and behind you the sound continues. Low, below hearing, in the chest, in the jaw. It continues for 40 more days. Then it stops. You are already somewhere else by then, and the stopping does not reach you until much later, in a different kind of quiet, in a room where no one is counting anything.